Okay, almost there. All right, we are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Welcome everybody to, I don't even know what to call this. I'm usually saying my show, but it's not my show. So I'm here with my dear friends and business partners, Lynn Goss and Loni Gerardi. Hey, you're real. You're not on Zoom. What is happening? So we have an exciting educational divorce type presentation for you to help you to help them during the most emotional, traumatic times in their life during divorce. So Lynn Goss is a business partner of mine. She's a CDLP, certified divorce planning professional, and she takes care of all my clients that are going through this traumatic situation. And she's got some stats that are going to blow your mind just in Central Florida. So just in Central Florida with where we at? Ocala, Orlando, Tampa, the Central Florida area is the staggering number. So Lynn, thank you so much for getting up early out there in California. Always nice to see you and work with you, of course. And so introduce yourself, tell us what's going on, and let's get started.
Perfect. I am so happy to be here. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Loni. Always good to see you guys. I can't touch you like I did when I was in Florida a few months ago, but good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lynn Goss, and I specialize in divorce housing strategy. And what that is I'm helping agents and their clients truly understand what's actually possible with the home before any decisions get made. And that's the critical piece when people going through a divorce. You know, most of the issues in these situations, they don't show up in escrow. They show up later. And when that particular plan maybe wasn't thoroughly thought out. So I'm going to kick it off today and share my screen. So
awesome.
Let me do this. Hopefully I will do it right and we'll be good.
All right. And if anybody, if anybody listening live with us or on social media, just so you know, if you ask the question, if you're listening on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, if you ask the question, we will see it. So feel free to ask any questions while Lynn is going through this. And this is not our last one. This is one of the very first ones. We're going to be tying some CE classes to this as well, and with Lynn's grace, that she's going to give us a bunch of opportunities to help all real estate agents across the U.S. to take advantage of this specific niche to help their clients that they already know, like, and trust.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Scott, you can see my screen?
Absolutely. Yep, we got you.
All right, so let's go ahead and kick it off. And so, like I said, my name is Lynn Goss. I am a CDLP. It's a certified divorce lending professional, and I'm also a divorce mortgage strategist or a divorce housing strategist. So I want to thank everyone for being here today. And what we're really going to talk about is something that most agents don't encounter. Let me rephrase that. It's actually something that most agents actually encounter, but few are actually trained in how to navigate. You know, divorce-related transactions, Scott, they're more common than most people realize, and especially being in divorce, right? We run across them, and we may not even know what's happening at the time initially, right? But one thing we do know is that divorce-related transactions don't behave the same way that traditional real estate does. And because most of the time, the breakdown, it doesn't happen during the deal, it happens after. So as real estate professionals, we may not even know it, right? Because it's after our transaction closes, after we've earned a commission.
Yeah.
It's after decisions have already been made, after the property's closed, and everyone thought it was handled. And the reason for that is because what we're really dealing with in these situations is not a transaction problem. It's not a, real estate agents or loan officers need to get better problem. It's people are making decisions under pressure problem. They're making decisions extremely stressed out, right? And looking for that immediate and not looking at that long term. So some of the agents, as agents, we're often stepping into that environment way earlier than anyone else. It's something you and I, Scott, have talked about forever.
Over and over,
right?
Yeah. Lynn, is it because we are scared to talk about it or ask questions because of the emotional impact that it has with us as salespeople?
I think so. I think that as real estate agents, we are taught to, get in, market, list, close, move on.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then go back and send them cards, and everything's always very happy, and it's a very positive situation because we're doing keys and Instagram photos. And when you would deal with divorce, those emotional pressures, and so sometimes what happens is real estate agents and loan officers, our industry, we tend to just kind of go, I just don't want to deal with that. I want to deal with happy people, and I just want that. But when you think about the number of people that we can serve, if you think about the number of families that we can put back together, if we can solve the housing instability post-divorce crisis, and that's what this is. That's what we're talking about.
Awesome.
Okay. So today is not about giving scripts or teaching how to handle divorce deals better. It's really about helping the industry recognize instability early. As real estate agents, how to stay in your lane, and ours as well as loan officers and as, divorce housing strategists. But how can we guide the process without taking on a risk that isn't ours to take on? And so once agents start to see it, they almost can't unsee it. So let's start with, what we're trying to solve today. Okay. So before we go any further, Scott, I really want to frame this correctly, because this is where these conversations usually get diluted. This isn't a class on divorce, right? It's not about learning how to handle the emotional clients better. What we're actually solving today is the instability inside the transaction that isn't being recognized early enough. So
like these are indicating factors of when people say certain things, this would trigger.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna give you some examples of that in a minute. It's when an agent or someone in our industry can see it, right? And we talk about once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
Not only can you not unsee it, you start to understand it. We start to understand why certain deals feel harder than they should, why communication starts to break down, and why you can do everything right as an agent and still end up in something that feels messy or exposed. And so kind of as we go through this, I want people to be listening really for one thing, right? Where in their current business, they're already seeing this, maybe they're just not labeling it like this, right? There's 4 patterns that they'll start to recognize. And when you recognize these situations early, and how to communicate without absorbing their pressure or their issues or their stress or their drama, right? But it's where agents unintentionally step into risk. And
fair enough.
Let's be clear about one thing really up front. I don't want anyone here to think that they need to become a divorce expert, right?
I'm going to leave that to you, by the way. I'm going to leave that to you. I'm just going to notice the signs and then give them to you. Yeah. I'll let you do that.
Appreciate that, my friend. It helps my job so much.
Yeah.
Because listen, you're here to become the professional who knows when something's unstable and how to respond to it without overstepping. That's really it.
Yeah.
Right? That distinction is really what separates agents who get through these deals from the ones the attorneys trust, right? The ones they refer to and the ones they bring in early compared to the ones that not. One of the biggest challenges most people have in divorce transactions is they don't show up labeled, right? Nobody walks in and says, hey, this is a high risk, emotionally complex situation with misaligned decision making.
Right.
Not to me anyway, right? Instead, it kind of comes across more like, yeah, we're just separating. We haven't decided what we're doing yet, or, oh, I'm still trying to figure it out, or he's still trying to figure it out, or I know what I'm doing, but they don't. There's just little things, right? And if you're a proactive agent, that can actually feel like what? Opportunity. Early conversation, early access, potential listing.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if you're going to cover this, but I know a lot of people that have worked with you and work with agents and a bunch of my friends that are in the mortgage business. When they do, when they're there to listen and go through this emotional stage with their clients, it's a friend for life, and I'm big on the last 20 years has been transaction based. And so we need to go relationship based. And this is one way to really go deep with your people that know, like, and trust you to be there for them, even if you don't do a deal with them. And I know you're big on that.
I can tell you, I have an agent. She's a top ranking agent at EXP here in my local market. I just saw her speak last week. She's 65 deals last year. Wow. So no small agent. And she took a listing. She went to a listing appointment, and it turned out it was a divorce situation. But because she's been through my curriculum and everything, she stopped. She didn't take the listing. She didn't walk out with the listing. Instead, she said, before you do anything, before you sign with me or anyone else, do me a favor, talk to the divorce housing strategist on my team so we make sure that listing your home is really what you want to do long term.
Right.
And guess what? It turned out he didn't list with her because it wasn't the right thing for him to do. We were able to have him hold on to the property, work out some other financing on another property to satisfy the equity buyout. And although the agent didn't get a listing, she has gotten 4 more listings from that person of his neighbor, his boss, and everyone else he knows, because she was the only one who didn't push for the listing. And I know that takes incredible discipline too.
Yeah.
But that's how we don't sound like we have commission breath, right?
Good point.
But
great story.
Yeah. It's just, I have dozens of stories like that, dozens of stories. So the shift that we're talking about, right, is it's really about the alignment, the language isn't the opportunity, it's lack of alignment, right? That's what holds transactions together. And so if we treat divorce real estate like we do our traditional real estate, it's never going to work, because we're stepping into a process where, decisions haven't been made, the roles aren't clear, the direction can change quickly. And if you handle it traditionally, you're not going to know what to do or how. And so you just I'll give you a perfect example. An agent that I just started working with, she was telling me, and the reason she was referred to me, she took this divorce listing, and she wasn't doing everything wrong. She was pushing back. She gave them a price of what she felt she can get for the house, and they just kept pushing back and pushing back. So as an agent, she did what most of us would do. She went and validated her position, right? She got more comps, showed them her best marketing package, and she just kept stepping up her side of services. And what she was missing completely, it had nothing to do with her service or the price. It was the emotional state of that client that knew that if she opened her house up for an open house, her divorce was over. So she did everything she could to block it, to fight the price, to just everything. And if we're not aware of that emotional side of divorce and how to interact and how to not coddle them and go, oh, or how to get drawn in, right? But how do we professionally handle those situations?
Gotcha.
And not let our ego come and go push back more and validate more. It's not has anything to do with us. Let's remove all of that.
Yeah. And
let's look at the person in front of us and realize they're going through something just absolutely horrible, So again, it's not about diagnosing divorce. It's about recognizing when clarity doesn't exist yet, because that's where the risk starts. So if we can just identify that one point, people can move forward, whether they like the decision or not, if they know the direction that they're going and they have clarity in how they're going to get there.
Makes sense.
And that's what I want to give back to people, is that clarity. My tagline, clarity before commitment. I want to help people understand what they're agreeing to, and also making sure that everything can happen before anything's submitted, before anything is finally, in that marital settlement agreement. Because most of the time divorces fall apart, like I said, later on in the transaction, when that refinance can't happen, right? That buyout can't happen. Now they've got to go back to court and figure out how they're going to make what they negotiated come true.
Gotcha.
Let's see if we can get through some of these slides, man. My friend, you and I can talk divorce all day long.
I know.
Let's talk about some of the early signals of instability. So this is a part where if you've been doing this long enough, you start to feel it before you can even explain it, right? Something in the conversation like we've been talking about, it just feels off. Maybe as an agent, you ask a simple question and you get 2 different answers, right? Or one person's talking and the other one is just like quiet or arms crossed, whatever it is. Obviously not agreeing, and even worse, not disagreeing. I think that's even worse. Just quiet, and I've been through a divorce. So anybody that has been through one, that these behaviors, right? So the quiet one, that's a big one for me.
Big one, right?
What about this, Scott? So Loni, no urgency, right? Or there's extreme urgency. We've got to get this done. How many times have you been brought in and they're like, we need to get this done quickly. But then you ask a follow-up question and there's no plan on, well, how are you going to do this or this? I hear all the time, and I know you guys too, oh, we're going to figure out the financing later. We know we have good credit. Don't worry about it. And every time I hear that, I just pause and I cringe, because they don't even know if it can happen or not. They think it can, and that usually means when they think they can, but they haven't validated, it usually means that decision's already in motion. It's already moving forward, but there's no clarity. And so that's where the instability is going to come in. So if you look at it through this lens, kind of like what's on there, right? You guys can read that. I don't need to read it to you, but 2 decision makers, no clear alignment, etc. You know, urgency without a defined plan, everything becomes a mess, right? Financial assumptions without verification is the biggest one. And this is where really, really good agents get pulled in, not because they're doing anything wrong, but because they're just trying to help. You know, you want to create movement, you want to solve, you want to keep things on track. So in these situations, movement without clarity is usually where things start to spiral. So not asking any of the agents on this call to diagnose anything, just start paying attention to those moments where you think something's not fully aligned here, because that instinct, that's the moment you want to slow down, right? That's the moment. Again, not a transaction problem, it's a decision problem under pressure. Okay, it's a decision problem under pressure. So we talked about this in one of the bullet points, you know, where agents unintentionally take on risk. This is the part I really want people to pay attention to, because this matters the most. Again, this isn't about bad agents. This is about really good agents trying to be helpful in a situation that's not fully clear, completely different. And it usually shows up like this, right? You're in the conversation and someone asks, hey, do you think I can afford to keep the house? And you answer, not because you're trying to overstep, but because you're trying to help. Or even worse, have you ever had one say, well, I think I should keep the house? And then the agent just starts walking through what that would look like, right? Again, not because we're doing anything wrong, but because the conversation's happening in front of us and we're the only ones they're looking to. You know, this one happens a lot, and it breaks my heart when it does, but you know, the agents become the go-between. You start relaying information, trying to keep things calm. It's okay, I'll relay it to her. Before you realize it, you're not facilitating a transaction anymore, right? You're carrying pieces of that decision.
Big time.
And that's where the risk comes in. You know, there's a big word, triangulation, okay? You've got 2 parties that are getting divorced, and you've got one spouse that says, hey, Mr. Real Estate Agent, can I talk to you about this? Or have you seen this? And they try to divide, or you don't have to. And so we talk about, like, how do you communicate? You communicate to all parties on all things at all time, period. There is no, you know, conversations, right? So because if that happens, they're now influencing outcomes, they're interpreting financial situations, they're helping move those decisions forward without having the full picture. And in divorce, those missing pieces, those are the pieces that matter the most. You know, the shift isn't really, I'm not saying stop helping people. What I'm saying is start recognizing the moment where helping turns into carrying all of that burden with you.
So it really boils down to just listening instead of selling. Listening for the cues that'll lead into opportunities or what do I want to say, a solution to whatever's happening. But if you don't listen for it, you could lose the whole thing totally, but you could put them in a worse situation as well.
Correct. And when you think about it, people going through a divorce, the single mom, the single dad, whatever it is, pick your story, right? The you know, divorcing senior, everyone needs that stability to move forward. And we have an opportunity not just to help them get the next house and get a sale, but actually put some of these families back together and whatever their new norm is, right? For example, I have a client up in Washington. She's on a big ranch with horses. It's too much for her. And one of the things she said was, and he's reminded me of that. So that tells me it's too much for her. It's this burden, right? She is a stay-at-home mom for 25 years. Her goal and dream, and I asked her this question, and instead of saying, where do you want to live? You know, when the divorce is over, it's like, when the dust settles and your new norm is here, what does that look like? Where are you living? Who's in your life? Where are your kids going to school? Whatever that is, right? And for her, in her situation, she actually wants to go back to school to get her law degree to help the people in a certain part of the country. Well, we're going to help her by renting near her daughter's school, because her daughter has 3 years left of high school. So she's going to rent while her daughter is in high school. She's going to go back to school to get her law degree. And then in 3 years, she'll move and buy.
Love it.
Well, there isn't a commission there for a real estate agent nor for a loan officer. But as a divorce housing strategist, there is, because that is helping people take the right steps to be able to put them back together again.
Short-term,
that's what we should be, as an industry, responsible for. So let's talk a little bit about this. Their role definitely, the shift, this is where the pressure comes off. We're not responsible for solving their divorce. We're not responsible for deciding who keeps the house or what someone can afford or how the full financial picture plays out. It's not their role. It's not ours. Their role is to bring stability into a process that doesn't have it yet. And
just
slow things down.
And just for full transparency, you do or have done CE classes for judges and attorneys. You work specifically with them throughout the process when it comes to divorce planning.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So anybody listening to this now or later, just know that we're going to give you guys like her QR code to be able to get a hold of Lynn, but like she can help you with those attorneys and judges and things that happen in the courtroom that she's familiar with, that she knows what they do and she knows what they should and shouldn't do, because they're transaction. They're not into it to try to help save a marriage or make people good before, during, or after. They're in it to just provide a transaction, where Lynn
Correct.
pulls back the curtain and says, all right, where do you want to be, short-term, long-term? What do we need to take care of first?
And then how can I work as a team to do that? Yeah. What happens is the attorneys, no fault of their own, they're there to talk about what legally everybody can have.
Right.
But just because you can legally be awarded the house doesn't mean that you can financially afford it. And so when we have real estate agents that understand all these moving dynamics, that puts them into a role that attorneys respect and clients respect. And we start being able to put transactions that can hold up under, scrutiny and everything going forward. Right. So we've talked about, shifting the conversation. We've talked about, instead of saying, what do you want to do? Right. That's normally a normal question. But in these, we don't actually know. They don't know. So when we ask that too early, we're kind of putting pressure on someone to give us an answer, and they don't have that kind of clarity. So what I want the agents to know is, instead of pushing for a decision, just shift the conversation slightly. Ask what decisions have already been made. Now you're grounding the conversation in reality, right? And then kind of figure out, hey, what still needs to be figured out? Because that will open the door without forcing any movement for your clients. And then I think the one that I think is most important is, who else is involved in these transactions?
Kids.
Right? Because in divorce, it's rarely just the two people sitting in front of you.
Whole family.
So whole family.
Yeah.
And if those pieces aren't aligned, the real estate decision, it's not ready to move forward yet either. So it isn't about asking better questions to control the outcome. It's asking better questions so we can see where clarity is, and more importantly, where it isn't. And once we know that, we know how to respond without stepping in the middle of it. So this is kind of, for me, we're kind of rounding up to the, last 5 or 8 minutes or so. And so what I want to do is just kind of talk with you about kind of how everything comes together. Because when you start seeing these situations, right, we haven't talked about processes, systems, or frameworks or anything like that, because it's really about helping agents understand just one thing. How do I stay helpful without stepping onto something that isn't yours, right? How can we help people? And the way to do that is 3 quick things. Oh, what just happened?
You just go to present, go to your slides, slideshow, and then from current slide. Oh, it's at the beginning again. So just scroll down to the next, hit your arrows. There you go.
There you go.
And Lynn, I wanted to say something on this. And I want to thank you for this, because you helped me to stay in my lane, because I don't, like, it's kind of like chasing 2 rabbits, you catch none. And so when you do get a divorce client or divorcing clients, and that's not your cup of tea, and it pulls you away from, like, what we do, putting people into a mortgage that that we're trying to do. And you're going to go over some numbers here in a second. It's going to blow your mind, just in Central Florida, but that's the one thing that you've helped me with. And I would challenge everybody to have a conversation with Lynn. If you get into the situation, stay in your lane. She has stay in your role. I like stay in your lane, because I don't want to do the divorce planning. I want Lynn to do it, and then just give back anything that I can do to help me stay in my lane, which is mortgages.
Correct. And mortgages is, no longer, I don't originate loans. I'm not a loan officer. So, that's where my guidance and my advice really resonates with the attorneys, the financial planners, the mediators, the CDFAs, because I have no commission breath. I'm here truly to help people, put their life back together, and then help our industry and real estate agents and everyone kind of understand what our responsibility is. It's more than just earning a commission. being the, everyone is, I've been a daughter of a divorced family. I know what that's like. I know what it's like to have to move and do those things. So I just want people to have that comfort. They can read what's here on the screen and, about getting comfortable, about staying in your lane, right? About understanding. The third one to me is the most important. Understanding when to bring in the right professionals, not later when something breaks and then we have to come in and repair stuff. Early, the moment that you feel that things aren't fully aligned. And then lastly, just don't confuse, movement with progress. Just because things are moving doesn't mean they're ready. Our job as loan officers and planners and strategists and real estate agents, it isn't to accelerate the process. It's to keep it aligned. And when we can do that, we're not just protecting the transaction, we're also protecting ourselves, from being pulled into something, right? That wasn't ours. And, if you step back and look at everything we've talked about, it really comes down to this. The agents who handle these situations well, Scott, they're not moving faster than anyone else. They don't have some, magic system. They're not pushing harder, and they're not trying to control the outcome. They're just seeing things early enough. Like the agent I mentioned to you that said, before I take this listing, would you talk with, right? They recognize when something fully wasn't clear, and they can adjust before it turns into a problem. And that's it. That's really what all of this is about.
Yeah.
It's not about doing more. It's about seeing it sooner. And when we can do that, everything downstream gets easier. Conversations, the expectation, even the transaction itself.
Well, it's a relationship. It's a relationship.
100%.
That's the best part. Can you, before we, and go ahead and go over this slide, but then I want you to go over the numbers that you
Oh,
have.
no, I'm going to bring the numbers in because
okay,
this is
right.
really, I know we've got like 3 minutes left.
Yeah.
So this is my last slide. Let me leave you with this. If you've been in the business long enough, you've already been in one of these situations. You felt what I was talking about today. Maybe you didn't call it like this. Maybe you're just like, oh, maybe you just thought those were two people going through a divorce and all they did was argue the entire time throughout the transaction. And it was because they were going through a divorce and they were angry. But maybe it wasn't. Maybe we could have done something different. Maybe that deal shouldn't have been harder than it was, right? But now you can see it differently. So most of the problems when we run in, they don't start with the transaction, they start earlier. One of the things I want to leave you with, and it's super important, is this. We're going to talk about Central Florida, Scott. In the areas that you talked about, Tampa, Orlando, Ocala, right? 7.4 million people. So I want you guys to listen to this for a second. These stats are just insane to me. So 7.4 million people, fantastic. I wish I could take a poll and ask how many of those people are getting divorced, but I know the answer, so I'm just going to tell you. You ready?
Wave your flag. Yep.
23,000. This is in 2000. This is according to the CDC. This is not Lynn making up numbers. It is according to the CDC. But in 2024, because it takes a while to count these numbers, 23,109 divorces not in Florida, but in the Tampa, Orlando, Ocala market.
And those are ones that actually were final divorce.
Final divorce, 23,000. Okay. So here's the bigger, here's the bigger statistic that I want every single real estate agent, lender, whoever happens to hear this.
Yeah.
We know for a fact that 70% of all divorces involve real property. 70%. So in your market, Scott, in your market, Loni, 70% of 23,000 is 16,176 divorces. So 16,000 opportunities for us as professionals to get involved and help put families back together, to help understand the dynamics of what we're doing, right? The opportunity is massive.
Yeah.
So I'm not here saying, let's all work in divorce because it's fun and it's happy. There is opportunity, obviously, but how do we handle that and handle it responsibly? Yeah. Right?
Love it.
My QR code is on the screen. I'm not selling you guys anything. I'm not a coach. I'm not running a coaching program or anything crazy like that. I am just trying to help elevate our industry. There's a QR code there if you want to meet with me and just learn a little bit more about how you can get more involved in divorce, how we can come in and work with Loni. And Loni and I are partners in Florida, and where we can come in and teach you and go through the 5 drivers of divorce real estate so you understand the emotions behind it. There is so much more that we can do to learn and be educated for ourselves to help our clients. And that's really what we're trying to do here.
Awesome. And so, Lynn, one of the things that I recommend every agent I talk to, every mortgage professional I talk to, is to let them know that you do have, whether it's Lynn or somebody else that's helping you with the divorce planning stuff, to let people that already know, like, and trust you, that you do have that. Like your one agent said, hey, I want you to talk to a part of my team that specializes in this. Like if you don't have that, get that, because now you can have that conversation. You can be there when this does happen, because it's going to happen. It's one of the 6 Ds I like to talk about. The number one's divorce, diamonds, diapers, debt, divorce. And so those are in your phone right now. And so if you as an agent are listening to this an hour later, these things are happening with or without you. If you're not deepening the relationships you currently have, and I hate to bring up AI, but AI is going to take them from you because the marketing is getting smarter by the day.
Mhm.
And so if you're not keeping the relationship, nourishing the relationship, and letting people know who you are, what you do for a living. And one of them is this, where you can be a part of the solution instead of just find out later, oh, you went through this and we sold one house, bought 2 more. There's 3 transactions you missed out on, and you can be a part of the solution and a part of the emotional part that builds the relationship that turns into several future transactions to help people with the largest purchase or sale of their home that they're going to have in their life.
Right. And as an industry, we all want to be there for that largest purchase of their life.
Of course.
And then when they have to sell that and try to repair their life, we're like, oh, everybody wants it, right? But that most attorneys, when we ask them, how do you advise your clients when there's a home involved? Their response was,
I don't.
We don't really.
Exactly.
We just
sell it.
We tell them to call their servicer or
Yeah.
call the agent that they bought it from.
Yeah. A good friend of mine that I won't say any names, but she says so many times she gets lawyer paperwork that has the wrong stuff in it that isn't the best for the client, and there's other better solutions to put them in.
Correct.
But like I said, it's a transaction for them. It needs to be a relationship with us that actually we can help put them in a better situation. So I can't stress that enough. Start talking to your clients about this. Get on Lynn's calendar if you're seeing this, and let's start helping people pre, during, and post to not have issues when it comes to credit, when it comes to buying, selling, investing, refinancing, debt consolidation, all kinds of cool things that we can do to help them put them in a better situation.
100%.
Right.
Scotty,
Awesome.
Lonnie, this was fun. I know we're going to do more of these, and I can't wait to be able to bring in, all the CE, Scotty, that we're going to be doing, and just
Gonna be
everything,
amazing.
educating the agents.